The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Our ultimate goal? To serve more people, more efficiently, in more innovative ways, and accelerate economic development in the entire region.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Last Tuesday at its annual meeting, Metro released its vision for the future. The Go Forward plan incorporates a number of new elements that recognize new realities about the way the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County are put together. The proposed changes are summarized in a video released at the meeting.
The plan will make riding Metro easier, serve more places, shorten travel times, and enhance social and commercial activity. Some of our new solutions are groundbreaking, like the Uptown Transit District. Uptown is the second largest employment center in the city, with more than 55,000 employees and an annual economic impact of more than $3 billion.
The Uptown Transit District will connect more Metro routes, along with hospital and university shuttles. Enhanced shelters with real-time bus departure information will be located throughout Uptown, making it easier for students to get to school and employees to get to their jobs.
Other innovations will get even more people where they're going faster and easier. Metro Plus, our first step towards bus rapid transit, will provide frequent, limited stop service along Montgomery Road to Uptown and downtown, connecting UC, Xavier, and many communities in between. Metro is also keeping pace with development by serving new destinations like Mercy Health West Hospital, plus shopping, employment, and educational institutions.
With better connections to both jobs and healthcare, our community and economy will be a lot healthier.
In addition, we're opening up the west side by connecting more routes at the Glenway Crossing Transit Center.
To talk about the Go Forward plan and a companion study that puts Metro in a broader context, I'm joined this morning by Terry Garcia-Cruz, the Executive Director and CEO of Metro, and Michael Jones, a Research Assistant Professor at the Economics Center at the University of Cincinnati. Terry, welcome back to Newsmakers. Michael, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Good morning. Terry, the elements of this plan, the Go Forward plan, some of these are familiar. You and I have talked about some of these on this show, and but some of them are moving, they're more of a long-range plan. So what's the short range, what's the long range, what's already working, where are you headed?
All right, well, that's a lot in one question there, Dan,
what the heck?
It's great to be here with you once again, and thank you for the opportunity. It's basically summed up in the fact that our short-term plan was rolled out in August, and it's working out very well. The Metro Plus system, you and I talked a little bit about that. Right. It's a precursor to bus rapid transit, has already tripled in ridership. So needless to say...
So are we talking about that route that was shown in the video coming down Montgomery Road and getting into the center of the city through all those major centers?
Absolutely. Montgomery Road, up to Uptown, and ultimately the banks, and those are huge destination points for us, and we have not had that direct service before. Plus the service frequency is incredible at 50 minutes, and so it's branded differently. It's beautiful. It's what I call my head turner bus. People will look at it and what was that? And so we also have a lot of new destinations coming from the west side. You saw in the video the hospital, Mercy West Hospital, and so what even is better is that we had a state of Metro address that kind of highlighted the accomplishments, what we've done in the short term and what we plan to do in the long term as far as the Go Forward vision, which is basically looking at what this community wants. The next part of the first quarter of 2014, we'll be reaching out to the community once again to refine that plan. A lot of park and ride lots, transit centers in surrounding areas, trying to figure out how we can take service into the suburbs and link those employment centers to opportunities.
Let's back up just a little bit.
Okay.
And even though we've focused on, you and I have focused on bus rapid transit, not everybody remembers. You live with this every day.
Sure.
Remind us what bus rapid transit is and why Metro Plus is what you call a precursor.
Okay, awesome. Bus rapid transit is a new way to bring premium service to a community. Typically, you will have real-time information. It will be a dedicated roadway so that you can get that faster travel time.
And we don't have that yet.
No, we do not. Limited stops, and so it's just a really more direct, faster, convenient way to offer transportation options. Here, we're taking what I call a baby step, if you will, just making sure that what we roll out is in fact successful, because we want to demonstrate to the region that it's working, and obviously we've seen some great ridership.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the number you used on the increase in ridership on the...
We're averaging about 1,500 passenger trips daily.
Okay.
A lot of
on
those,
that route?
On that particular route. A lot of those are coming into the UC area, and it's a great connector for Xavier, the academic part of our community, with UC transferring over to Cincinnati State. So we're really looking at just a better way to improve the connections within our community.
Well, President Ono was, in your video, was trying to make the point that uptown, which people may not be that used to that term, but the university area, second largest employment district in the region. So giving that really good service is absolutely essential, and that's lots of people want to get there and need to get there. So, Michael, you're at the UC Economics Center. So often in any community, we talk about what's happening in our community, in this case with public transit, with buses and whatever. Your study tries to put things in a larger context, a comparative context, and it really is similar to this set of reports that have been done over the past few years by Agenda 360, Vision 2015, on comparing us to 11 other cities. What was it your study was trying to do here? What was the focus of what you were trying to do?
So we were asked to compare Metro to those peer cities that Cincinnati competes with in terms of its labor and other businesses. So we wanted to focus on how efficient does Metro use the resources that it's given. And so what we found was that when we compared Metro to those other 11 cities for which Cincinnati competes, is that Metro is the most efficient in terms of how
let's pull that up. Sure. We've got one of the full slides, but okay, go ahead. And so, efficiency measured in what terms? What do you mean that?
Great. So we wanted to focus on this economic efficiency. And so the way we measured that was we provided several different ones, but the one I wanted to focus on is its fair revenue per operating expense. In other words, how much revenue does Metro collect in terms of the expenses that it pays out? And we found that Metro is actually #1. In other words, it collects the most fair revenue for every operating expense dollar. And that's a great testimony to the way that Metro uses the dollars that it's given, and that it's very efficient relative to those peer cities.
And is that number, I forget what that number is, it's
37 cents.
37 cents, I was off a penny. 37 cents. Is that a number that has held steady for a long time, or is that a number that you've been able to increase in recent years?
I would say it's kind of been held steady for the past 3-4 years.
Okay.
If you look at other transit systems, we call that the fare box recovery. That amount is phenomenal for a system of our size. The other aspect, Dan, that I'd like to highlight, particularly since we're talking about operating expenses and efficiency, is that we are now going into our 4th year where we have actually balanced our budget without a service reduction or a fare increase, which is phenomenal, particularly as you look at other transportation systems across the United States that are taking huge service reductions.
So you've been able to hold steady for the last 4 years, and some of those, especially the first part of that 4-year period, was a pretty rough part, still in the recession and still struggling with lots of things.
Exactly.
So,
and roll out new service on top of that.
And roll out new service. So, Michael, back to your study. So efficiency is one of those things that you were taking a look at. You also took a look at how does Metro compare against these other 11 cities, 12 in all, in terms of the level of service?
Right.
Now, where does Metro fall in that? And we've got a slide from your report on that as well.
So I want to take a second to break this out into 2 pieces. When we looked at Metro, we looked at the bus-only cities. So we looked at what are those cities of those group of 12 that provided only bus services, and then we also looked at that whole set. And what we found is when we look at just those bus-only cities like Columbus, Louisville, etc.,
And I think this, just so everybody knows, I've got the slide up that looks at all 12 cities. So we come out 7 there.
That's right.
So right in the middle of the pack for all practical purposes. What about when we just have bus-only cities?
Then they go back to number 1. When we just look at those bus-only cities, they take the lead in terms of providing service.
Metro does.
Metro does. So what we find is when we looked at that slide, when we looked at as it's falling number 7 relative to those other cities offer a lot of other modes of transportation. And so those cities are able to provide service for those customers who desire to provide or are looking for a different way to get to their work.
Okay. And we're talking about cities that might have light rail, they might have a streetcar, they might have bus rapid transit.
Correct.
That's correct.
Someplace like Cleveland has bus rapid transit, right? That's in operation and along the Euclid Avenue corridor, as I understand it.
The Helpline, it's very successful.
Yeah, highly successful. So, but even when we're comparing ourselves to cities that only have buses, you're back on number 1. So, and is that something that, you know, let me ask the question this way. I don't have any problem, longtime resident of the city, I don't have any problem imagining that that's true. But how do we measure that? Because once you move outside the city, and I live about a quarter of a mile outside the city, service changes a lot, even in Hamilton County. So when you were doing this, were you looking at how we function inside the city or how we function inside the county or inside the region? What are we measuring?
We're measuring its entire service area. So we're entire service area. So we're not just looking at the city. And so I think that's important to keep that context in mind as we talk about how well they do relative to these other cities. The service levels do start to diminish as you get out to these further regions. But again, relative to those cities that provide bus-only services, it still exceeds those peers in terms of the service it provides to those surrounding communities.
One final area of this comparative, there's a lot more that we're never going to get to in your study, but one more area and that is the question of funding and the level of funding that comes from state and local. And here we are. Remember, we have 12 cities, and Cincinnati ends up number 10 in terms of the financial resources that you have to work with. What's that tell you, Michael?
Right, so we wanted to look at how much funding does Metro receive from the state and from local funding sources. And what we found is when we looked at that Metro actually receives far less in terms of funding from the state and local governments to be able to fund its services. And yet with those dollars that it does receive from the state and local funds, it's able to provide superior measures in terms of the service levels and in terms of its efficiency.
Terry, this gets it to a crunch, which is the Go Forward plan has visions of a much more robust system than what we've got now.
Absolutely.
So we're not going to be able to do that with the current level of funding. Is that an honest evaluation?
And the study basically addresses that in terms of relying on the revenue that we're getting from our customer is really difficult in terms of service expansion. We were really conscientious in refining what we have, reallocating those service miles that were not productive. And I think we've really stretched the rubber band as far as we're going to be able to stretch it. And we have a plan. We have the community that supports the plan where we've got momentum, and we just have to figure out how to move forward in that momentum.
So do you have a plan for what you want the system to look like? Do you have a plan for how to change the funding model yet?
We're working on that, and we will be working on that with the community and other decision makers.
Okay. Michael, I really want to say I like it when we get out of just talking about what we're doing and begin to look at comparison, because until you do that, you don't know where you are. So I really find your study, and I want people to be able to look much more in depth at both the Go Forward plan and your study. So if you want to read the Go Forward plan and the comparative economic study, go to gometro.com website, or just Google Go Metro, Go Forward, and the plan will pop up. The video will be there. Michael's plan will be there as a PowerPoint, and you'll learn a lot about this. As always, thank you for all the work you're doing with public transit, because one of the things back when Agenda 360 was being put together, what did everybody say we needed? A more robust public transit system. Clearly, we got a very efficient one, so thank you and congratulations. And Michael, thank you for your work. It really puts it in context.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, a conversation with those who think that not only should we finish the first leg of the streetcar, but that we can block the new mayor's commitment to kill it.
The streetcar is a component of Cincinnati economic development, and it's a project that grows the whole city, not just an urban core.
10 days ago, almost 400 supporters of Cincinnati streetcar turned out for a meeting at the Mercantile Library that spilled out onto Fountain Square. Despite Mayor-elect John Cranley's easy victory at the polls on November 5th, these folks think that not only should the streetcar move forward, but they have the arguments and the ability to block his momentum. To discuss the effort to keep the streetcar on the tracks, I am joined by Ryan Messer, a resident of Over the Rhine, who's emerged as the spokesperson for the latest streetcar effort. Ryan, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
We are taping on Friday morning. Yesterday at a committee of City Council, John Dietrich, who is the manager of the streetcar project, reported about the numbers that are involved with stopping this project. And I don't want to get caught in the weeds on all of the numbers, but sort of the basic summary point was that even on the surface, this is going to cost as much to kill as it is to finish. Do you agree with that?
You know, unfortunately, I was at my day job and wasn't at the meeting.
You have to actually work.
That's right. But what, you know, I peeled through the numbers last night and obviously read as much as I could to kind of get an understanding. You know, it may be, that number might be a little bit less, but there's no question there is a significant amount of dollars that will go out of our pockets as a city to cancel this project. And so I think what we have to figure out is, let's get somehow all parties to align on what that number is, so it's not a, we don't believe it. Well, yeah, they're the numbers. No, we don't believe it. John
Cranley was saying this morning in a post on, again, I say it's Friday, this airs on Sunday, so saying on Friday morning on a report on the Courier website that he doesn't believe your numbers. So, or not your numbers,
sure.
John Dietrich's numbers.
Yeah.
And so therefore the question becomes, can there be an independent auditor that comes in and figures this sort of stuff out? And we're not talking just about returning the federal dollars, and the federal government's made it clear it wants its money back, but we're also talking about contractual responsibilities to the major contractors. And what I don't think is calculated in that number yet is the potential lawsuits that are faced by people who've invested and feel like you've pulled back.
Yeah, and I think all those numbers have to be considered. Last evening, we got together in this Believe in Cincinnati movement that we've formed since the election. And in one room, we had over 30 small business owners who live and work in the urban core, in the central business district, as well as over the Rhine, many of which not only invested their life savings to open these businesses, but they've moved to Cincinnati to do that, or they've moved from areas outside of the city. So I think they all have concerns that they've made these investments. Again, many of them, they're life investments, and they're concerned that this may get terminated, which then changes the game for the business case that they either went to a bank or personally made that decision to go into the area.
Are people among those 30 that you were talking to saying that we might go to court and sue over that for damages for the city reversing based on assumptions they made?
Yeah, and I think people are looking at their options to figure out, you know, where could they have a case to protect their assets, just like, or their investment, like anyone else would want to do. And I think these are the very early stages, but it does create a real question. If there were marketing materials sent to them, either by 3CDC or realtors or something from the city promoting why invest here, that specifically said this particular property is on the streetcar line, that absolutely influenced their decision. And had they known that this issue that had been voted on and in fact started with rails in the ground was in question, they probably would have thought differently about that decision.
Okay, that's sort of the rational economic side of this,
Sure.
but ultimately this is a political issue.
Right.
Because people could decide to kill it anyway,
Sure.
even though there's a significant economic impact from that. So politically, where are the votes? It seems to me that there are three sort of solid pro streetcar people, but there are three new people coming on, all of whom said they're against the streetcar. John Cranley, as mayor, is clearly against the streetcar. I don't think you're going to turn him around. And there are a couple of people left over from the old council who are against it. Where are the votes? I don't see the votes.
And I think you laid it out perfectly. There's a one conservative arm of the council that is absolutely opposed to it. There are three that absolutely that are progressive, have spoken out over time in favor, and then you have three in the balance. And
who do you see as the three in the balance?
That would be David Mann, Kevin Flynn, and P.G. Sittenfeld.
Okay.
And I think the challenge for them is, in some cases, they absolutely campaigned against it. In others, they came out and said, we need to do it responsibly. And so I think they have the next X number of days and weeks to comb through the data. And politically speaking, there was a lot of campaign rhetoric to engage people against the streetcar that unfortunately I think has changed us from having an east-west rivalry to somehow this downtown versus non-downtown rivalry that unfortunately became a political maneuver to garner votes. That being said, we now have to provide a story that is accurate, that's not a positive story or a negative. It's the reality of what transit does to a region, what transit does to an urban core, what a strong urban core and bringing all these people around phase one of the streetcar could do for people in Westwood, in Avondale, and neighborhoods around the city.
Well, let's be realistic here. P.G. Sittenfeld did show up at that meeting at the Mercantile Library 10 days ago. Certainly wasn't saying where he stood, but he was listening. Have you had a direct conversation with P.G.?
Yeah.
And
I've had as informal as even at the gym. What I know about PG is he is thoughtful, pragmatic leader who I think has the runway to be a long-term leader for our area. And I have a lot of respect for him and was a big supporter of his. What I love also is that we can have disagreements and conversation about these topics. And what I know is he cares about making the right decision. And so I don't think he was right out of the gates going to say I'm a supporter or not. He wants to see the data. Recently he posted the 9 questions that he has. And so if someone were to say, are those reasonable, I would say absolutely. And unfortunately, there's not been a communication plan about the value of, yeah, it's about the streetcar, but it's about development and everything that comes with it.
Actually, I got to tell you, every time we've done a streetcar interview segment on this show, we've talked about economic development, not transportation, because that's what this thing's always been about. What about David Mann? You had a conversation with David Mann.
Actually just came from a conversation with David Mann. And remarkable guy, long-term leader for the city. And again, he wants to look very pragmatically at the numbers. I think, and hopefully he's okay with me quoting him. There were some numbers presented yesterday that have to be evaluated. And maybe some of them were on the high side. But what I saw is he feels like you have to look at the numbers. And that's exactly how I feel.
So you feel like there's at least a willingness to look at it?
Absolutely.
What about Kevin Flynn?
We'll be meeting with Kevin Flynn early next week to have the conversation, but some people I know have met with him already, and it seems like he's in that same camp. Let's look at the numbers, let's listen, and then we need to make a decision that's right for the region and the city.
What if you lose at council and the coalition holds together to kill the streetcar? Have you talked about putting together another ballot issue that takes this directly back? Because one of the arguments has been that the mayor's race wasn't just about the streetcar, even though the political rhetoric seemed that way sometimes, and putting us back on the ballot again. Have you looked at that?
Yeah, that's absolutely an option. I think that what wasn't done by the people that see the vision of what the streetcar can do for the city. What they didn't do is plan for Plan B. And so that's what you've seen happen and emerge, people coming out of the woodwork to get involved in the movement. So that group is looking through what are the lessons we can learn from groups like Coast and how they navigated the waters to drive an agenda. And so we're looking at some playbooks and trying to learn. We're everyday Cincinnatians, but trying to work with the right people to make that happen.
The timeline on that's a little bit longer, but the timeline between now and when council votes is really very short.
It's really short.
Very short. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This topic's going to come back, I can tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women working to shape our region for the future. Have a good week.